Hey, Jordan from Precondo here. Today I want to show you guys the most insane chart I have seen, the craziest data I have seen on the Toronto and Canadian housing market in a long time. And we're going to start off with a quick market update, so let's jump right into this. All right, so this isn't the data in question, but I just quickly wanted to go over this. This is median property selling price across all major regions in the GTA. You can see that property prices are starting to rebound. Now, with that being said, this is on very low volume, right? So we're running at like 50% volume in terms of home transactions that we would typically see at this time of year. And so this isn't really a confirmation that like the market is rebounding in any major way. It's more of a stabilization, or at least that's how I'm looking at it currently. Now, given we haven't seen rate cuts, I don't see any fundamental reason why this would be happening. And we were anticipating to see more inventory coming towards the spring market, but we just haven't seen that. So these prices are starting to move up functionally because there's just not a lot of inventory out there. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about in this video. So let's get into the good stuff. So this is the population growth in Canada versus housing completion data. So if you look at the blue line, that is the population growth. So you can see that through COVID, obviously we saw immigration levels plummet, and then it rebounded. Now, it's no secret, this stuff is making all kinds of headlines. So we saw the Canadian population grow by over 1 million people in 2022. Now, of course, housing completions, they lag, right? They take a bit, it takes a while to build a home, especially a condo. And so, at the same time as seeing insane levels of population growth, of course, housing completion today is predicated on what was sold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so you're seeing it relatively stable around our long-term average of about 200,000 units nationally. And so you can hop over to CMHC and you can pull the housing completion data for any region, any period of time. It's very thorough data and it's really easy to parse. So I pulled that data and looked at the completions in the GTA for 2022. We completed just over 4,500 single family, so detached properties, just shy of 3,800 semi-detached and townhomes. I rolled those into one category together, and then 19,701 condo units. So in 2022, we completed a total of 28,955 homes. Now, I wanted to further contextualize that and break that down by persons per household. In a sense, I wanted to figure out how many people do those 29,000 homes actually comfortably house. And the way to do that is to look at the persons per household data from the census. So they look at, given a certain property type on average, how many people live in those homes. So then you take that data and you multiply it by the housing completion numbers to get an idea of how many people are comfortably housed without skewing persons per household. So essentially, if we're going to continue on that average trajectory of this many people living in this type of home, how many people are actually housed by those housing completions? So you see that we built enough detached for roughly 15,000 people, enough semi and townhomes for 12,000 people, and enough condos to house 40,000 people. Essentially, another way of looking at the housing completion data is that we built enough housing in 2022, or rather we completed enough housing in 2022 to comfortably house a population increase of 65,864 people. So then naturally, the next question becomes, so of that population increase of over 1 million people, how many of them landed in Toronto? And generally, historically speaking, we're seeing 30 to 35% of the national immigration lands in the GTA. However, over the past few years, as a result of COVID and a trend that we're continuing to see, there's obviously been a major exodus out of the cities and out of Ontario as a whole as people go to more affordable provinces. So what we're actually looking for is, of course, the net increase in population after accounting for emigration and deaths. Again, luckily, that data is relatively easily accessible, and you can find it here. The Toronto Metro did a study on it, but this is all just data from the government. So if you look at the GTA total, the population change in 2022, and they're comparing to 2019 because it was a particular high flyer year as well, and I'll get to that later, but our population change was up 147,000 people. So again, we built enough housing to house an additional 65,000 people, but we saw a population growth of 147,000. Just let that sink in because it's a crazy number. Now, I already know some people in the comments are getting going. The wheels are turning because I see it every video. People always argue with me that population growth has nothing to do with housing prices, which is, of course, an absurd argument to make. Some people will say it's entirely interest rate driven. Others will say it's foreign buyers and vacant homes. Look, the foreign buyers at 3 to 4% of the market, first of all, they were just banned from buying. And second of all, it's not that big of a chunk. So am I arguing they make no contribution solution to property prices? Of course not. That would be an asinine argument. I think realistically, though, when you boil it all down, the truth becomes that 80 or 90% of the property market is determined by really two things: supply and demand, and then interest rates. And everything else is secondary to those factors. Now, as I mentioned, they were comparing to 2019 because it was a particular high-flying year with 131,000 increase in population. So was 2018 with 123,000. So I've pulled up one of my older charts just to give you an idea of what happened in those 2 years. So it's not as good looking as my new chart, but it gives you a very quick idea. I'm not going to go through it in length here. You can pause it if you'd like to. But essentially the gist is, in 2018 and in 2019, we built enough housing in the GTA to comfortably house 155,000 people at the current persons per household multiple. And during those same 2 year period, we saw a population increase of 252,873 people. So of course, again, a 2 year span where housing supply is just vastly falling behind immigration and population change. And so I think this is a trend you're going to continue to see into the future. And although the housing target outlook from the feds looks really good on paper, the question is, of course, how can it even be achieved with the labor market as tight as it is and the cost of construction as high as it is? So some people would argue, okay, we can build our way out of this problem. You know, there's money to be made, and therefore developers will step up to the plate and deliver the new housing, and it'll help kind of keep things under wraps. But the truth is, nobody's buying pre-construction right now. Not nobody, but new launches are not absorbing the way they used to. So you have to remember that the vast majority of new housing supply in Toronto specifically is going to be condos. And so you have to remember how condos get built. And I harp on it all the time on this channel, but essentially they have to get pre-sold, usually 75 or 80% pre-sold at a minimum profit target before the developer can actually break ground on the project. The problem right now is that resale condo prices haven't really budged in 2 or 3 years, and the cost of construction has risen rapidly. So as a result, pre-construction is now way more expensive than resale condos. So new launches are coming out at like $1,600 a square foot in neighborhoods where you can pick up resale at $1,250 a foot all day long. And so you have a situation where investors are scared of the current interest rate. They're hesitant about the short-term outlook of the market, and so they're more careful where they invest. And at the same time, pre-construction is a worse deal today than it ever has been before. And so what you get is, you get not a whole lot of sales. And so as a result, new condos are just not launching. If the developers can afford to hold off, they will. And we already saw this in 2022. We were supposed to see 35,000 new condos launch in 2022. It was supposed to be a big year for condo launches. We only ended up seeing about 25,000 launch. And again, that's a trend that I think will continue this year. Now, I want to leave you guys with one final thought, because people love to talk about the greedy developers, right? When we finally need all this excess housing supply, they're not stepping up to the plate and delivering. But the reality is that a developer, it's a business. They need to hit a certain profit target in order for that bank to give them a construction loan. There's literally no other way for them to build these buildings. And so the final thought I want to leave you with, and I would love to hear your guys' take on this in the comments, is that on an app, let's say you're buying a $1 million pre-construction condo today. Of that $1 million, on average, about $230,000 of it is going to the government in the form of fees, taxes, levies, inclusionary zoning, list goes on. Now, the developer on average stands to make about $100,000 in profit. That is, to me, an insane number to look at. The fact that the government fees are so much higher than developer profit, to me, is part of the reason why we continue to fall short on our building targets. But I would love to hear what you guys think. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next week.